The Ballad of Cleophus Walker, Hillbilly Spaceman, written by AltCipher. Holy shit! A wiry, dirty man crawled out from the airlock and clambered to his feet. And then tremulous smoke wafted out of the airlock behind him. Half a dozen armed Marines surrounded him. Man alive, I'm glad you old boys pulled up when you did. Stand to, one of the Marines barked at the man. Name and ship's registry. Cleophus Walker, Sarge, the wiry, dirty man said. I ain't got my regs on me, they're back in Dolores, Cleophus said, hooking a thumb back towards the airlock that now had a respectful amount of smoke billowing from it. The lead Marine grabbed Cleophus by the front of his shirt and tossed him face first against the bulkhead. It's First Sergeant DePage, Mr. Walker. The other Marines began patting Cleophus down for contraband. 2 Marines wearing protective gear and rebreathers entered the smoking ship. Well, Sarge, you might want to tell your boys to watch out. Cleophus started, but was interrupted by 2 Marines running out of the airlock, screaming, Verbiste! Cleophus finished. He turned and faced the airlock. Every Marine snapped to and aimed their overly large rifles at the airlock. My wet sucking sound drew closer to the exit. Plop, plop, plop. Now, Sarge, you can do as you please, but if Betsy gets out here and sees you putting a fun to my head, well, she's liable to take that poorly, Cleophus said. Plop, plop, plop. What the hell is in that ship? First Sergeant DePage asked. A misshapen muzzle poked its way into the light. A tongue slipped out from between razor-sharp teeth, each longer than a man's hand. A brutal face swallowed the nose out of the darkness, like a twisted nightmare of wolf beyond this campfire. This beast spoke to the most primitive parts of the human mind. What the fuck? First Sergeant DePage shouted. Marines! Fire line! Hold up there, Sarge, Cleophus said. She ain't hurt nobody, and all of them guns and shouting like it make her jumpy. Cleophus walked over to the hatch and patted the monstrous head. Yeah, girl, they didn't mean nothing by it. He rubbed the creature's ears and said, You just go on back and lie down. We'll get this situated. The beast withdrew her head back into the darkness and disappeared with a plop down the corridor. Jesus, man, First Sergeant Page said. Where the hell did you find something like that? What, Betsy? Cleophus said. Well, there was this fella running some illegal hooch or something out in Wisco. He paid some highfalutin scientist to make the worst guard dogs that he could think of. I helped a couple of police get the fella's number, and one thing after another, I took Betsy home. She's been with me since. First Sergeant, one of the Marines said, We can't get a repair team in there with that thing loose. Damn right, Lance Corporal. First Sergeant DePage said, Mr. Walker, you're going to have to secure your pet before we can fix your ship. We'll also be inspecting for any health and safety violations, such as an unregistered, illegally manufactured bioengineered organism. Well, Sarge, Betsy don't take too kindly to being locked up. She's pretty used to having the run of the ship, Cleophus said. Either you secure the animal or we eject your ship, First Sergeant DePage said. Tell you what, Sarge, how about we let the ship air out a mite, and then I'll lock Betsy up in my cabin. I toss her a big old steak, she'll eat it up and then take a big old nap. First Sergeant DePage looked at the hatch, then back at Cleophus. You want me to leave that hatch unsecured with a wild animal wandering loose? Give that thing a chance to get on my ship. Not gonna happen. Fine, Cleophus said. You get me a breather and a steak, and I'll lock Betsy up. Fair enough, Sarge? First Sergeant DePage nodded. PFC Williams, go requisition a steak from the mess. PFC Dawson, give Mr. Walker your rebreather. 20 minutes later, Cleophus crawled back out of the hatch and pulled the rebreather off his face. Hooey, Cleophus said. Smells like a dead possum's ass in there, even through the breather. Anyway, your big scary Marines ain't gonna worry about Betsy. She's curled up asleep in my room. First Sergeant DePage nodded. PFC Williams, let engineering know to get up here double time. They don't go in there without an armed escort at all times. Half an hour later, Cleophus sat down across the desk from Commander Dansk. She was a severe-looking woman with her hair pulled tight against her skull. Now, Mr. Walker, what happened with your ship? Commander Dansk asked. Well, Cleophus said, scratching his head, damnedest thing, Commander. I was trying to get that colony over on Biast. I might have been pushing old Dolores a little harder than I should have, because got me a hot date over there and plumb blew out a manifold. Commander Dansk blinked and blinked again. You overtaxed your engines and just happened to do so within hailing distance of a Terran warship. Yeah, I've always been lucky like that. Must be because of the clean living. Mr. Walker, Commander Danks said, leaning forward over a desk. We're about to host a summit with the Talari. This was an undisclosed location, yet you somehow found us. I'm afraid the hot date story isn't going to do. Now, why don't you tell me the truth? Talari, little fellas, about 2 feet tall, furry, buck teeth. Yes, the Talari. They are a diminutive species, but they represent an important new trade and intelligence partner. I'm sure you've seen the news. Nah, Cleophas said. I ain't much one for reading the news, but them Talari are something else. How's that? Them's good eating. I beg your pardon, Mr. Walker, Commander Downs said as she reflexively sat back in a chair. Good eating, Commander, Cleophas said. Must have been, going on 15 years now. Me and some boys was out prospecting and ended up at the end of Talari space. One thing led to another, and they ended up attacking us. Blew up our damn ship, leaving us stranded on some damn near lifeless rock. Well, we has it pretty rough for a time there. Weren't no food to speak of. Rations ran out 2 weeks in. We were starving to death out there. But them little bastards wouldn't hear a word of it. Kept harrying us. Couldn't get no sleep. Didn't have no food. Like to make man crazy. Well, old Lefty Joe, he had about all that he was going to take. So he set a couple of traps, and the next time the little Talari came snooping around, he caught a couple. Like I said, we were starving to death, so Lefty kills them, skins them, cooks them. My God, you ate an intelligent species. Hell, some folks have had to resort to cannibalism to survive. We wasn't going to turn on each other, so we had to make do with what was to hand. How could you eat a sapient species? Pan-fried with a little sawmill gravy's the best way. I mean, they're basically space squirrels. Now, like I said, we had to make do, so we just roasted them, but stop. Commander Danks put a hand over her mouth and fought down the rising stomach. Just stop. She focused on her breathing and not letting her insides get on the outside. There is a sensitive diplomatic conference going on. I cannot have you endangering that with your tales of xenocannibalism. I'm going to assign you temporary quarters, then I'm going to confine you to these quarters until the summit is over. We'll repair your ship, and we'll try to forget that we ever met each other. Well, how long is the summit? I've still got a hot date to get to. Not long. We'll hold you here another 5 days. We should be able to repair your ship by then as well, Commander Danks said. I suppose I'll have to take the deal, Cleophas said. But who's going to look after Betsy? Ain't like she can stay cooped up without food and water for 5 days. And, Betsy is basically a hound dog, sorta. Anyway, one of your Marines maybe put her away before they'd fix my ship. I'm sure that we can find someone to walk your dog, Commander Danks said. Well, Cleophas said, scratching his chin. Betsy don't care much for strangers. One of your boys might get hurt, and there'd be no end to the fussing. Commander Danks rubbed the bridge of her nose. Okay, she said. Then let out a sigh. I'll let you go back to your ship under escort, twice a day to check on your pet. You are to stay away from the ship's engines, controls, and communications. You will take the most direct route from your quarters to the ship and back. Understood? Cleophas smiled and stood up. He thrust out his hand to shake. Commander Danks rose and took his hand. You got yourself a deal, Commander. Cleophas found himself in a well-appointed room, given that he was a prisoner on a military ship. The bed was clean, he had his own bathroom, and there was a room to stretch both his arms out at once. He felt like a king. The commander was as good as her word, though, and he was not allowed out for any reason other than his twice-daily visits to Betsy. Meals were brought to him in his room, and he received reports on the repairs of his ship. Cleophas tried to engage his guards in conversation, but they were strictly business. On the 5th day of his forced vacation, Cleophas asked his escort, Something going on last night? Whole dang ship feels like a balloon about to pop. The guard glanced around before answering. I'm not supposed to talk to you, he said. Come on, Private. Ain't like I got a lot else going on. I already counted the rivers in my room 3 times. Okay, keep your voice down. Scuttlebutt is that the negotiations went bad. The Talari think that we're too primitive. Insults were thrown around. There's even talk about the Talari going over to the Mechites. Well, damn, Cleophas said. That surely seems like a waste. Say, I don't suppose you know where the negotiation room is, do you? 2 decks up, couple beams forward. Not anywhere near your ship or quarters. That's a shame. Well, no sense crying over it. You like music? I guess. What's this got to do with Talari? Oh, nothing. See, I got a mess of old classics back in my ship, but I ain't been able to listen to them in a coon's age, 'cause of this here imprisonment. I figured if I could teach you a couple, maybe you'd help me in the harmonies while we walk. Oh, that's, I'm not much of a singer, sir. Ah, hell, son, singing ain't about what's in your throat. It's about what's in your heart. Long as you put your heart into the music, can't nobody complain, Cleophas said. I guess that should be okay. All right. Cleophas's face cracked open into a wide, bright smile that looked like sunrise. Now, I'll do the first verse, and then we'll practice it. Cleophas cleared his throat, and his face became serious. Your cheating heart will make you weep. You'll cry and try to sleep. The two men walked down the corridor, working on the melody. They sang through the verses as they visited Betsy, and as they walked back. The next morning, Cleophas was already waiting for his escort. The door chimed, and the other side was First Sergeant DePage and 4 Marines. Sarge, Cleophas said, are you fellas here to help me feed Betsy? Not quite, Mr. Walker. We're to escort you to Commander Dansk, First Sergeant Dansk said. She just can't get enough of me, huh? Cleophas said with a smile. One quick march later, Cleophas was dropped into a chair in front of Commander Dansk's desk again. In the other chair was Private that he taught to sing. Morning, Commander. Morning, Private. What's all the fuss? Cleophas said. Private Dabrowski here was just telling me about the singing lessons, Commander Dansk said. Well, 'tweren't much of a lesson, Cleophas said. Just a couple fellas passing the time. Passing the time, really? Well, Private Dabrowski was humming the tune most of the evening. He happened to be humming it when the Talari delegation was disembarking. Do you know what happened when the Talari delegation heard that song? The commander's face was stern. Of course not. You all had me locked away, Cleophas said. The Talari delegation stopped in their tracks. One of them urinated on the deck where he stood. The youngest one cried openly. The senior negotiator chittered something so foul that our translator refused to translate it. They left as quickly as they could back to their ship. We received a message this morning that they've agreed to our demands. Well, Cleophas said, ain't that something? You all did a good job. No, Mr. Walker, we didn't. It was that damned song. I asked Private Dabrowski about it, and he told me that you taught him the song. Why would the Talari react so poorly to it? Commander Dank stared daggers across her desk at Cleophas. Cleophas sat back in his chair and crossed his legs. I couldn't rightly say. Maybe them old boys don't care for Hank. Maybe they got scared and a private singing voice. Who knows? It wouldn't have anything to do with your previous experience with the Talari, would it? Couldn't say, ma'am. I do know that I'm awful fond of that song, Cleophas said. Been singing it or humming it most of my life. And just maybe you were singing that when you were killing and eating the Talari. Private Dabrowski snapped his head around to look at Cleophas, his jaw hanging open. Could be, Cleophas said, not telling what spooked the little fellas. Commander Dank sat still, her shoulders barely moving as she breathed. Her face was a mask of immobility. Cleophas counted many long seconds. Mr. Walker, your ship was repaired a few hours ago. You will get in that ship and leave the sector with all due haste. You are forbidden from entering Talari space. Finally, if I ever catch you so much as failing to file the proper landing permits on a colony, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your days in a very deep hole. Are we clear, Mr. Walker? Commander Danks fought to keep her voice down. Absolutely, Commander. Me and Bessie'll head over to Best and won't bother you all no more, Cleophas said. He stood up and stuck his hand out to shake. The commander ignored him and busied herself with other work. First Sergeant DePage and Private Dabrowski escorted Cleophas back to his ship. Did you really eat those Talari? Private Dabrowski asked. Son, when a man's starving to death, he'll just do about anything to keep living. Besides, them Talari was attacking us. We fought back and, well, they were mighty tasty. Cleophas climbed back into the airlock. Been a pleasure meeting you all. If you're ever out at Bast, drop in and look us up. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.